That's just it.
That's just it.
Olsen's a Swedish name.
Yeah.
And I coined that a long time ago, well over 20 years ago, and I'm Swedish. I'm a piper, so
yeah. Have you ever? I've got a friend, John Charles, who's a piper. I think he started on highland pipes. He plays a lot of small pipes these days, but he just barely, like a week or so ago, bought himself a set of Swedish bagpipes.
Swedish?
Yeah. You ever look into those?
No. I've never heard of Swedish bagpipes.
Oh yeah, man. They make some cool music for sure. Yeah, there's some. In fact, it's interesting that like in some of the sort of small pipe groups that you're around in, I've in the last couple of years I've come across some Welsh songs that work well on Scottish small pipes that always they sound so cool. There's something special about Welsh melodies. I don't know. I've never met a Welsh song I didn't like, but a few Swedish pipe players have pointed out like, oh, I could have sworn that was a Swedish tune. So like, I wonder if there's some sort of idiomatic similarity between Welsh music and Swedish music. I don't know.
I have no clue.
Yeah, me neither. I definitely don't know it well enough to have any idea.
This is the first I've ever heard that Swedes had bagpipes.
You're like made for it, dude. You're already the Swedish bagpiper, so it's perfect.
Oh, well, I don't know. I'll have to look into that.
Yeah, man. Now I'm thinking about it too. Actually, you heard of this guy Timothy Cummings? He makes really great bagpipe music. I think he's working on an album with a nickel harpa player. So I wonder. I hadn't even thought of it before, but I wonder if he pulls Swedish bagpipes into that somehow. I guess we'll see. They've got an album on the horizon. I wonder if that'll be something. Anyway,
yeah,
this wasn't all going to be about Sweden. Tell me about yourself first of all.
Gosh.
Where did you grow up, Ted? Did you grow up here in Utah where I am? Or?
Yes. Yeah. I grew up in Bountiful.
In Bountiful, huh?
And I live in Centerville now, and
North Utah. That's the part. See, I grew up down in South Utah County, so. I guess kind of the middle of Utah, but in so many ways feels like southern Utah because until you get pretty far south, it's like just tiny towns, you know?
Right, yeah. So, yeah, I spent pretty much my whole life in this area.
Yeah.
I get, as far as piping goes, it's all Andrew Morrill's fault.
How many people in the world do you think could say something like that? It's all Andrew Morrill's fault.
It's all Andrew Morrill's fault. Andrew and I went to high school together.
Oh, gotcha.
And, in fact, we even dated the same girl.
Hey.
And I think that's how we met.
Okay, now hang on a sec, Ted. I wasn't expecting an opportunity this early, but if I may,
sure.
I've got an excerpt from this lovely essay that you wrote. I'm gonna, if it doesn't bother you, it's just a paragraph. I'm gonna read it, and then I want you to tell me about the events around that it's based on. Right?
Oh yeah, sure.
So here's what it says. It says, I tried it once years ago while playing the trumpet in high school. With the whole high school band watching, a friend of mine, who, a decade later, would teach me the pipes, opened a bagpipe music book to Scotland the Brave and set it before me on a music stand. In front of almost every note was a group of grace notes, hanging there like a bunch of grapes. In most clusters, there were 3 notes. Many had 4 or 5. I made it through about 8 measures of music before giving up. Sight reading it on the trumpet was like driving a minivan over a boulder field. My friend looked at me blankly and said, "Well, that sort of sounds like it." Was that Andrew? Was that Andrew Morrill? Is that what was going on there?
yeah, that's Andrew. It was. I can remember like it was yesterday. It's just. Yeah, I'd never seen music like that before. I mean, I played the trumpet all through junior high and high school, and then it was toward the end of the year. Our senior year of high school, and the band director wanted Andrew to come in and kind of demonstrate the pipes, and then he said, "Hey Ted, come on down here and take a look at this music," and we were friends anyway, so I went down there and looked at this,
Yeah.
and I thought, holy cow! And what I played on the trumpet sounded nothing like Scotland the Brave.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just, like I said, it was just a big minefield, and I remember Andrew looking at me just kind of like, well, yeah, all right, that sort of sounds like it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was Andrew Morrow. I liked the bagpipes anyway.
Sure.
But when we became friends our senior year of high school, it kind of, I kind of got into it a little bit. In fact, now that you mention it, it's it's been 45 years to the day that I went to my first Scottish
Whoa, to
festival.
the day. Really?
Yes.
Wow, look at that.
It was 1978.
Yeah.
And June 17th, which was a Saturday,
Mm-hmm.
1978, I went to my first Scottish festival.
Yeah, look at that.
And that's a week from today.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so we've got it's exactly 45 years. And I would only know that because I wrote it in my journal.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so
I don't feel like Ted. I don't feel like having dated the same girl always turns into the two guys being good friends. So what?
It's kind of funny.
How did that happen?
Well, there's this girl that I had known for years. I dated her a little bit in my senior year of high school. We were good friends, and I don't remember how it happened, but I kind of just moved on, but we were still friends, this girl and I, and I remember sitting by her during a school musical, which was Carnival.
Oh yeah.
And Andrew was in it. Andrew was a roustabout in Carnival, and he was really funny.
I thought you just meant like I see. I know. I guess because of the context of the animated movie Dumbo, I know what a roustabout used to be. But for a moment there, I just was imagining more like a rowdy young man rather than a roustabout. Yeah. And I thought you were just saying Andrew was that in general. I see. He was playing a roustabout in the play. Okay.
and he was funny.
Yeah.
And I was sitting by this young woman, and she started laughing, and she really liked, and I think I pointed him out to her or something, and the rest is history. And
did you ever regret that?
No, not at all, not at all. No, I didn't. And I can't really put my finger on exactly when we started hanging out, but we just did.
Yeah.
And so that after we graduated, that in June, on June 17th, I went to the Scottish Festival. It was up at Westminster.
Mm.
And Andrew took 2 first place in competition.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of, I was kind of like, for a while, the band groupie. Over the years, I'd see him at the parades, and I went to a couple of more Scottish festivals and stuff.
Mm.
But it was in 1988, summer of 1988, I think. I was at a funeral that the Utah Pipe Band had played at, and Andrew and I were talking. And he said, you ought to join our band.
Mm-hmm.
You could be a tenor drummer. And I thought, well, okay. There was kind of, musically speaking, I wasn't in any band. I'd been playing my trumpet, but I wasn't in any band, and so there was kind of a hole. And so I thought, well, okay. And so I started tenor drumming, and that was kind of fun, but I would go to band practice and watch these guys sit around the table with their practice chanters,
Mm-hmm.
and I was watching their fingers, and I'm thinking, that's fascinating.
Mm.
I could do that. And so I got myself a practice chanter and started taking lessons from Andrew.
Was there like lingering curiosity about that fateful day in band class where like was it like a desire to crack the code of those bunches of grapes, as it were?
No, not really. I mean,
Yeah.
I didn't even really think about it then. And of course, then I had no clue whatsoever. Back in 1978, I had no clue that I would ever do this.
Mm-hmm.
And it just kind of happened. And so I started taking lessons from Andrew, and around 1991, I got my first set of pipes.
Mm.
In fact, we like to joke around it. My pipes arrived about a week or two before my second daughter did.
Oh, really?
And my wife couldn't tell which one I was
Which
more
one you
excited
loved
by.
more?
And so it kind of took off from there. And it's been some 32 years or so
Yeah.
since I've started piping.
Hmm. And still going today? You still playing with Andrew there at Wasatch District?
Yeah. We're still. I'm in the grade 4 band, and I will probably always be in the grade 4 band, and that's fine. And yeah, we're still playing.
What was
And,
the? Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, we're just plugging along, you know.
Yeah. How did you first get with the trumpet in the first place? Was yours a musical household as a child? Did you have siblings who had played, so there was a trumpet laying around, so that was the only path? Or
No, my brother, my older sister, my older brother, and I were required to take piano lessons.
like so many of us, it's a very relatable experience.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. And so I took 4 years of piano in grade school,
Mm-hmm.
and then my dad said, "Okay, well, do you want to play anything else?" And I thought I was going to be a drummer, and my dad was a drummer, but here's the deal. It was a flash of inspiration on his part, and he suggested the trumpet.
Mm.
And I thought, well, okay, yeah. I mean, that sounds cool. And
Had the trumpet been like a cool instrument in your experience up to that point, or was it kind of more like, well, that's a marching band thing, and I guess I'll do. I mean, I guess when I say cool instrument, I just mean like, were you casually listening to trumpet music already? Or?
I was casually listening to jazz.
Yeah, gotcha.
I mean, and to marching and other music. My dad, I was raised on the Mills Brothers and the Ames Brothers, and a few folk singers. You know, my dad listened to these, and so I wasn't really that versed in jazz, but I was familiar with it, and there were a few other guys in my neighborhood who were trumpet players too, and so we all went down to the junior high school band together, and I was taught by a man by the name of Dan Rich. Who was phenomenal. Just a phenomenal teacher, and the trumpet and I just took off.
Yeah,
it was I learned a lot, and I was a trumpet player. I was known through junior high and high school, and as the trumpet player.
Yeah,
and so it's been kind of torn between two lovers thing.
Oh,
and and a lot of my friends know about that. It's when I started playing the bagpipes, my trumpet was up in the closet, on the shelf, and I spent much more time with the pipes. But then I would pull my horn down and play a little bit, every few months. And
just wait long enough for your lips to get weak, so when you pulled it down again, you felt bad about yourself.
Yeah, and and it was always one of those, tug here, tug there type of things. And now that I'm retired, I have more time for both. And I've been playing my trumpet more also.
Yeah.
But it's still, kind of a battle.
Did you ever hear, there's a band called Brother out of Australia that uses bagpipes quite a bit. They have a song called Mr. Maintenance that puts together this really great trumpet solo with some bagpipes.
Oh, no.
It's
no,
so good. It's
yeah.
worth looking up on the internet.
Brother.
Mr. Maintenance by the band Brother. Yeah.
Mr. Maintenance.
Yeah, it's so great. It's just great. Just awesome. Both the
Yeah.
trumpet, the bagpipe playing is really impressive, and the trumpet's lovely, and they go together real nicely.
Oh my gosh. Well, that's great. I'll have to check that out.
I feel like I feel that I can relate very much to your experience thus far, Ted, just because my trajectory was also required piano lessons, then trumpet, and then bagpipes, and throughout my life since then, it's been like this. Well, I'm spending a lot of time on bagpipes, but I sure miss playing the trumpet. I wonder if I could find a way to play trumpet more. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Especially when you find a pipe band, it's kind of, I don't know, in my experience anyway, it's hard to find a similar kind of thing for trumpet, like a community group to go play with.
Well, no, there are community groups, and I've played with, lately, I've played with one, and they're, if you look, I'm sure there's plenty in Utah County.
Gotta be, right?
And there are several in Salt Lake County and Davis County.
Have you been getting together? Is it like a big band kind of thing, or like a park gazebo kind of group that you're playing?
Yeah,
with?
it's a concert. I mean, the one I've been playing with is a concert band.
Yeah.
And they play, some really interesting concert band pieces, college level pieces. These are, and so I've been doing that too. And so it's kind of striking a balance. So you're either practicing for these concert band performances, or you're practicing for your pipe band competitions.
Right. Yeah. Keeping you busy through retirement, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Does your daughter still to this day wonder which one Dad loves more? Like,
well, my kids grew up really with their dad playing just the pipes. They never really saw me in a band with the trumpet.
Oh, I just meant like, does she wonder why you don't visit more often because you're so busy getting ready for other stuff with your pipes?
No, they're all good with that.
Yeah,
they're I make time when I have to.
Yeah.
So we're a musical household. My wife's a clarinetist. Both my daughters are vocalists. One's trained in opera.
Oh wow, yeah.
And then of course I'm a trumpet player and a bagpiper.
Well, what about writing? Because reading through that essay, it was a delight to read. So it was obvious that you were somebody who enjoyed writing. Because somebody who enjoys writing is going to write in a lovely way. You know what I mean?
Well, funny you should mention that. Yeah, I made my career as a writer, and as a copywriter, and so yeah, and I still do write. I edit.
Is that something that also existed from childhood? Like just as early as you were playing trumpet, you were also writing?
I've always written something.
Yeah.
Usually short stories. And so I've always been writing. And it's been, I've always wanted to be, I wanted to be an astronaut. I wanted to be a psychologist. I wanted to be a marine biologist. I wanted to be a truck driver. But I've always been a writer. And so that's just the way it is.
Yeah.
And so it's either writing or music.
So in spite of making a career of it, you still love it. That didn't kill the beauty of it for you.
It's different. I don't do much copywriting anymore. It's more fiction. And short stories and novels.
Do you feel like you're kind of a I don't know, like Chronicles of Mars kind of guy, or more of a like Pat McManus kind of guy?
Oh, well, Patrick McManus was great. And one of my early bosses in my career loved Patrick McManus.
Yeah.
And turned me on to Patrick McManus. And then my brother had several books of Patrick McManus that are now mine. And that guy is hilarious.
Oh yeah.
I mean, he was great. I mean,
I aspire to be like an old man storyteller for just like him, you know.
Yeah. He was really good. No, it's more short story and literary fiction, I guess. You know, I guess if I were to name some of my favorite authors, Herman Wouk, David Gooderson, Snow Falling on Cedars. Now that you ask me, they all drop out of my mind.
Naturally, yeah.
Charles Frazier, Joseph O'Connor. You know, there's some really good ones out there, and they're all inspiring.
Ted, when you as a writer, when you read, are you the kind of person who like has one book that you're working through until it's done, or do you have books just all over the house and in your car, and you're just like, are you forever in the middle of 11 different books?
Hardly 11. No, hardly any more than 2 or 3, and usually just one. If I'm reading more than one book, probably one of them is a fiction, and the other one is probably a craft book that's talking about writing.
Oh, interesting.
You know, yeah.
How meta does that get, right? To be like reading a book that was written about the act of writing things that can be read.
Yeah. Well, you get into that after a while, into craft books and to keep up on things and new thoughts on how fiction is evolving and stuff like that. And I'm no master by any means. I should I'm still learning. We're all learning.
Well, the thing, Ted, I guess, like, I really enjoyed reading that essay, and the thing is, like, toward the end of it, you mention this thing where you say, I have considered that I might be a better writer if I sold my pipes, and I could become a better piper if I just quit writing. It simply makes sense to commit to one thing and excel at that. In music, literature, sports, stage, we've seen the inspiring results of such tremendous focus, but I have made people happy with both my piping and my writing. If I were to quit either of them, there would be fewer such people in my world. I'm perfectly willing to waffle in the hopes of making more. And it feels so relatable. Like, I don't think you're the only one. Like pipes are a thing that like take a lot of time and focus and money. And so I think a lot of us, like, you have to be kind of obsessive in order to get that deep into this hobby anyway. And I suspect that a lot of us have had this experience of being like, I should just sell my bagpipes because I don't have room for the other things in my life as well, or burn them or something, you know, and so it just felt so relatable to read that, you know, like.
Oh, well, good. Thank you. I appreciate that. It's still true. You know, you just like, you have to divide your time up, and for me, I structure it now that I have more time. I have to structure, or else I don't get anything done. And so there will be days when I practice my trumpet. There will be days when I practice my pipes. And every morning I do some kind of editing or writing. You know, and that's just the way my things are turning out.
Do you have strong feelings, Ted, about like the mediums for books? Like I hear people talk about like potential benefits of reading strictly on paper versus an ebook, and then there's the convenience of having something that's on your phone or tablet, etc. Right? Do you have any strong feelings about that? About like the physical space of ink on paper or anything?
Yeah, I'm always preferring a physical book. There's something about holding it in your hands and turning pages and hearing the paper move, and for me, you know, if something hits me in a book, whether it's a craft book or fiction or even poetry, I'll mark it. I'll take up a highlighter and mark it.
Mm.
And you can do that also with an ebook,
Yeah.
you know. But I generally prefer a physical book, although I've read ebooks
Yeah.
on my iPad, and they're you know, when they're done well and they're formatted well, then they work too.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but I generally prefer to have a physical book.
So
And I don't think I'd ever try to read a book on my iPhone. It's just
so
like,
teensy, right?
yeah, it's just
Yeah.
too small.
What it's interesting you mentioned highlighting stuff, because like I don't know, Ted. I'm not like I like reading, but I'm also a very slow reader. So like, man, I'll tell you what, I have an 11-year-old son who I think probably has consumed more pages of reading than I have already, just because he reads like his mother, just consumes books, and I wish I had that. But in recent years, I don't know where the impulse has come from. I never did this before, but just in the last few years, I can't read without highlighting. Like, just it's like this. It's an impulse. It's almost a tick. Like I need to have something there so I can highlight those parts that stand out to me. And I don't know where that's coming from. And I'm curious, why do you think you do it? You know, do you go back and reference, like, to go back and see the parts you liked again to remind yourself of what you loved in that book, or like, what's the reason for highlighting for you?
Well, for me, it's if I in a book of fiction, if I think something is said profoundly, then it becomes kind of a, you know, yeah, this is something to live by. Or it's just said so well. It's so poetic, you know, and I think poets, and you know, I don't want to get off topic here, but poets make the best fiction writers. I really think so, and they and so when you read something that is so enlightening, that your consciousness is raised up a notch, that yeah, I want to remember that and enjoy it again. So even when I read the whole book again, in a craft book, I'll go through and highlight things that that are pertinent to writing. You know, there's a book here I've got that is it's a thick hardbound book on it's a craft book about writing by a guy named George Saunders, A Swim in the Pond in the Rain, and I read it a couple of years ago, and I mean I marked it up, right, and I'm going through it because I in editing and stuff, I come across experiences that remind me of something I read in that book. And so I go back to that book to reference it. And so I do that. Yeah, I do that. I do that with a lot of craft books on writing. And it's just a part of if highlighting, of just marking those things that are meaningful to you, that you can use. You know, it's just my brain's not big enough, I guess.
That's one way to look at it.
I mean, I have a pretty good memory, but I just can't recall something right off the top of my head. I could recall it. Oh yeah, it's in this book. I can go find it.
I feel like I've heard or seen something about studies that like the jazz musicians being put into MRIs and asked to like solo. Right, or pretend to solo, right, in their mind, like they'll listen to a track and like just think of a solo that would go over it, and just observations about like parts of the brain that light up for language use, also relating to music, and that's pretty darn vague, you know. I'm not sure where exactly I came across that, so maybe it's all bunk, but it does make me wonder, like, do you feel like you maybe see similar things where if something is said poetically and beautifully in a work of literature, and that stands out to you and kind of elevates your conscience? And I'm not trying to lead you too much here, but I'm just kind of curious. Do you ever experience a similar kind of magical moment when playing a song, whether on pipes or trumpet or listening to music? Is there a connection for you in that way between language and music?
I can't see that there's a connection between language and music. There is a point of, I guess people call it being in the zone.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's a point where it's like almost an out of body experience when you're performing. When you're writing, when you get to a point in your writing where it's everything's coming, the ideas are coming naturally, and everything's flowing. You know, it's still going to be revised, but you're just moving. And the same thing happens in music, whether and it happens to me more often in a band, although it has happened to me individually too, where you just, you're performing it, you're like one, you're so united in your performance, you're like one instrument.
Yeah.
And that's what makes playing in a band, whether it's a pipe band or a jazz ensemble or a concert band, that's what really does it, I think, for me, and I think for many other musicians, is that you hit that point of unity where you're listening to each other and you're feeling, and you're right on beat. Everything is nearly perfect, and you're and you end, and you realize, everybody realizes that they've just had a really really great experience.
Yes, absolutely.
You know. I could go on forever on something like that. I've had numerous experiences like that.
Well, speaking of experiences, another part of your essay that I really liked a lot was when you were talking about playing, I think in southern Utah, and some deer came out to see you. This was something that kind of surprised me. At the beginning of your essay, you open up with saying something like, if I'd known the effect that the pipes would have on people and animals. And I was like, wait, and animals? What do you mean, and animals? And you had this lovely moment where you say, let's say you were playing out there. Oh, and you say you saw some deer coming out of the juniper trees, and you said they stepped to within yards of the sandy cliff where I stood and stared at me intently. We were so close that I could see their dark eyes, their twitching ears, and their tongues as they licked their lips. And remember, to the listening audience, you're playing your highland pipes at this point, and the deer are approaching you. Like, they're pretty loud, right?
Yeah.
And then you say, we stood there fascinated, I would like to think, by our common presence. Certainly they had seen a human before. I alone was nothing new. It was the sound that captivated them. My imagination ran away with me then, and as I played, I saw one of them turn to the other and whisper, "Be careful, Mildred. Don't get too close. We don't want to scare him." Which I thought was like so delightful, all on its own anyway. There was like something of like the Far Side comics to the scene in my head as well, you know.
Yeah, well, the thing is, though, and I think in that same essay I wrote that a bagpiper in a park is like a deer in the woods.
Yeah.
Because people will come up to you, and I play in a park near my home, and numerous times people have come up to me and they stood a few yards off and watched.
Yeah.
And they kind of come up and start asking questions, and you get this opportunity to explain the bagpipes. You know, and I love it every time I do it, because bagpipes, have taken it on the chin for so many years.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
So to clear it up, and a lot of people, love them.
Yeah.
You either love them or you hate them, but yeah. So I like that. It's kind of a fun turn that, yeah. You be careful, Mildred. We don't want to scare them.
That's right. Yeah.
It's just, but that was a fun little experience. This was down in outside Capitol Reef.
Oh, yeah.
In southern Utah, outside of Torrey, Utah.
Right.
And yeah, and there are other experiences. with different animals.
Tell us about the peacock. Tell us about that one.
Well, that was I'd been asked to play for a wedding up at the restaurant, the Lakai restaurant, and I'm not sure if you're familiar.
Oh, that's the
with
French one, right?
Yes,
that's all the French club kids from Utah County do like an annual trip up there.
Yeah,
like end of year kind of thing.
Yeah, well, it's a beautiful place. I mean, it's just any bride's dream, really. And here you had these wonderful kept lawns and flowers and trees, and it was a beautiful day. And it was supposed to be a surprise for the groom, and so I was supposed to be standing off to the side where people really couldn't see me. And then I would get the cue from the wedding planner lady and to start playing. And so I'm watching this woman. I'm standing there, my bagpipe is primed with air, ready to go. But this place had like a dozen or so peacocks. I don't know, maybe, and they're strutting around the whole. These male peacocks are strutting around the whole place. And there's one that's coming right up to me, and it won't go away. And so I'm waiting for my cue, and sure enough, I get the cue. The bride starts walking up the aisle, and I strike in to play Highland Cathedral.
Naturally, yeah.
And all of a sudden, this bird just goes nuts. I mean, it's
right,
and it's just going crazy, and it's like your fire alarm, your smoke alarm in your house. When one goes off, they all go off.
Oh, so
right?
more of them joined in.
And so it was just like.
And were they raising their tail feathers and everything too? Getting all found out.
I just heard them. I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm watching the bride go up the aisle, and she is like focused. Nothing's gonna mess up her day, and the audience they're all smiling because here I am playing, and being upstaged by a bird. Yeah. Basically, and that was.
It's funny because like in my imagination I can see it going one way or the other. Like on the one hand, maybe they're like threatened by you and they're challenging you. On the other hand, maybe they're just joining in. They love this music and they're singing along with you.
Maybe that's it.
Though it also puts me in the mind of like I think I heard some theorizing that the whaling ship Essex, when it got sunk, that like it might have been partly the giant whale that attacked it might have been partly confused by somebody who was hammering on the ship at the time, and that hammering might have sounded like whale clicks in the water, so the whale that attacked the ship might have thought it was a rival whale, And I'm just thinking of you with your pipes, like maybe your pipes. Maybe a peacock's brain isn't all that big, and your drone's sticking up, looks kind of like a peacock tail.
Well, there you go.
They're like, wait, where there's
competition.
Exactly, the newest, biggest bird on the field, and they're like, hang on a sec.
Oh, yeah, that could have been it. Yeah, those they're fun, in retrospect.
Yeah,
and but yeah, it's interesting to see what effect bagpipes have on animals.
Yeah. So did Andrew all those years ago when he got you on tenor drum? Was he aware of your aspirations to become a drummer before that, and that your dad had been a drummer and stuff? Was that part of why?
No, not at all. No. It was just kind of a hey, we need tenor drummers. Ted could do it.
Hey, we always do need more drummers, so it does make sense.
Yeah, and he just thought, hey, yeah, you should come be in our band.
Yeah,
and I did, and it was one of those pivotal. You don't know it at the time.
Yeah,
but 30 years on, it was a pivotal time in my life.
Yeah, unexpected Axis Mundi thing, right, rising up out of your life timeline there. What about?
Yeah.
But have you stuck close to or ever gone back to tenor drumming, or was it kind of like just for a brief moment and then you got to pipes and you've never looked back?
Well, I was a tenor drummer for about 3 or 4 years.
Oh, pretty good chunk of time. Yeah.
With the Utah Pipe Band.
Yeah.
And then when I became proficient enough on the bagpipes, then I switched over, and they had a grade 4 band that I became a member of, and I've never really looked back.
I've been a blinders on piper for most of my piping time, so I really don't know much about the drumming side of things, but I have heard some people talk about plenty of musicality going on in the midsection, but I've heard some people talk about an era during which tenor drummers were pure eye candy, and they would put pillows inside of their drums just in case they accidentally hit a drum nail. Right? So which were you? Were you allowed to make music, or were you expected to be quiet?
It was I think I was in the transition part. I remember being trained by a guy from Canada, and I think he was with either Triumph Street or City Victoria, a guy named Scott Robertson, wonderful drummer. And he said the tenor drum should have a presence. And the word presence was and it wasn't, you shouldn't be bomb, bomb, bomb. You shouldn't be pounding you're dancing around a fire or anything. There should be just a subtle presence in there where the beats are distinct, but they're not overpowering.
Yeah.
The bass drum is the one that people have to listen to
right.
stay on beat, but the tenor drum has this presence and does more of an accent or offbeat type thing, which was always fun, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that to do the offbeat kind of stuff, and we were starting to do that a little more when I was tenor drumming, and then of course plenty of flourishing, and then of course, and I know other people feel differently, but to me, and I may take it from all kinds of drummers, piping is infinitely more enjoyable to me than tenor drumming.
Hey, takes all kinds, right?
Yeah, I mean, and not to I've seen wonderful tenor drummers, and there are drummers in our band who are great tenor drummers, and they're doing their job wonderfully. And they're doing some cool stuff, as far as the accents and the word escapes me, but they're doing some great things.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. And
and of course, we all hope that there will always be plenty of people who find so much, for whom tenor drumming or bass drumming or snare drumming is to them as piping is to you, right? That's what we hope, so that we can continue being pipe band groups.
Yeah, people. Yeah, it's a necessary part of the band.
Yeah.
And I have a good time with it. I've had some good experiences.
Yeah. Now, did you ever make any attempt to convince your children to join the band? Was that ever a thing that you hoped for?
No. I didn't. We didn't. I never had that influence.
Yeah.
You
weren't that important to them.
No. It had. If my Scottish ancestry had been more prominent,
maybe
you got to go back to the 1500s before you find any Scots in my line.
It was too watered down to make another generation, huh?
Right. But in Andrew's family, and in many other pipe band members' families, they come from strong Scottish backgrounds.
Right. You only go back to a grandparent at the furthest, and you find someone from the other side of the Atlantic, right?
Yeah. And so perhaps it would have been more emphasized, but it never. Of course, it never was in mine, and I wasn't about to insist that they do it. They took their own musical routes, and it's great because we're all variety. You know, we've got a great little variety in our family that way.
There's something that another thing you put in that essay that stood out to me as just being a lovely piece of writing, and again, like, just felt very relatable. Yeah, I mean, this is a piper writing and then a piper reading what that piper wrote, and so it makes sense that some things would be resonant. And I like the fact that word came to mind, because the part I'm thinking of is where you say you're talking about the drones coming in, and you suggest that that's a powerful, strong, loud sound, but it also is kind of like a meditative, soul cleansing and purifying sound. And then you say it is the white sound, the unblemished canvas upon which a piper paints an abundance of acoustic images. Lovely writing. I love reading that. It's just beautiful. So but I'm curious if there are different things you can focus on with the bagpipes. Do you feel like you have, like, if you had to choose, are you a drone guy or a chanter guy? You know what I mean? Like, like, what do you love about bagpipes, I guess, really?
Well, the thing that attracted me to the pipes, of course, was the fingering, the challenge of the articulation.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just so technical, and I have to admit that I am not anywhere near, I mean, I'm lucky to do a double cut roll cleanly, right?
I'm right there with you, so you're in good.
Yeah, and there are so many much more complicated manipulations of fingers than I have pursued. But that's what got me to it. So I guess I'm a chanter guy.
Yeah.
I love the melody. I love the melody aspect of it, and how the grace notes and all these other manipulations embellish the melody.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you love to hear a great set of drones.
For sure, yeah.
And I will, whenever I start playing or practicing, I will play my drones for 30 or 40 seconds before I do anything else.
Just kind of soak in that for a
minute. Just first of all, to get them in tune to each other before I get them in tune to my chanter. But I just so that you get that hum, and I'll get that going, and then get my chanter into it, and then tune my drones to my chanter. But yeah, there's when you're in a band, and it's hard for somebody who's not in a band, I think, to get the full aspect, because sound that behaves differently, whether you're in a band or you're outside of a band.
Right, totally.
And but when you're in the band, and you hear that drone sound, it's like I said, I think in that essay, it feels like you could raise a roof.
Totally.
Really, the power that's coming out of those drones could lift ceilings, and it's kind of, I don't know, it's and at the same time it's kind of meditative, it's that clean, pure, it's hard to put it into words. But
don't worry, because I think
it's that clean, pure,
yes,
that
absolutely,
meditative people get into.
Yeah, that's you're preaching to the choir in so many ways. So I'm sure since all of us are into this, we're probably all just like nodding and smiling, like, yeah, man, totally, yeah, exactly. Yeah. I do get a little bit a little hippy dippy with it. I like thinking about the possibility that we might be resonating with some ultra low inaudible frequency coming from Betelgeuse out in space or something.
Yes, somewhere.
Yeah.
Yes. 50 years from now, the 2011 World Championship will come back to us from somewhere.
Yeah,
in the
totally,
universe.
exactly. Yeah, yeah. And if we could visualize, it would be like the most intricate and beautiful mandala, just like emanating from some spot in outer space that it's bouncing back to us from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now we're getting Star Trek.
Here we go. It's life, but not as we know it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So then, Ted, I also I wonder, like, and I mean, if I'm leaning too much into the writing thing, tell me. I didn't actually intend to go so much in this direction, but these questions just keep coming to my mind. My wife is an amateur writer, and I mean amateur as in like she really loves it a lot, lover of writing, and she and she's done like you're probably familiar with like NaNoWriMo, the
I don't take part in it, but I
heard of
I
it.
should, but I don't, and but I'm familiar with it.
So she's done stuff like that, and like of course she's taken creative writing classes, which will sometimes include things like prompts and stuff like that. And I'm just curious if where the bagpipes have only 9 notes, and I think you actually mentioned something about this in the essay as well, though I didn't highlight it, so now I'm not sure exactly where it was. That you might expect that limitations would make mundane and simple music where you can't really, there's like 12 songs and that's it, right? But instead, there's just like, we all know that there's a lot of things you can do with bagpipes. And I'm curious if like in writing too, if you sometimes maybe set up parameters or like fences almost, like do restrictions force creativity?
Yes, they do. And I learned that in my career. They do, because if you and you have to have those, I think, to really, because if you don't, your writing could go anywhere. It could be without shape or and it does. You kind of have to put parameters or boundaries on what you're doing to force you to look at new ways of expressing, and so there has to be some kind of boundary. I don't know. I'm not sure how best to express it, but it's kind of counterintuitive initially when you think about it, because you think, oh, I should be able to write anything I want, but unless there's some form to it, it can't be digested, it can't be consumed, and people don't get it. It's true with in many cases with poetry. It's true with stories and novels. There has to be some boundary where this story ends. And although in reality the story may go on, there's a frame where the story starts and ends. And you have to know where that is for other people to appreciate it. And going back to the idea of sparking creativity, it's that boundary that makes you look at things alternatively and come up with new ideas.
Are there any tunes in particular that stand out to you that you have learned on the pipes that have been especially enjoyable, or that are just really special to you, that you really like especially? And also, are there any tunes that you've heard that you like so much you would like to learn them but have not yet learned them?
There's a couple of tunes that I heard Ross Morrill play once, and I can't even remember them. I wish I asked him the name and I forgot it because he played it so well. And my favorite tune is a hornpipe called Jimmy Blue.
I don't know if I know that one.
4-part hornpipe. I heard it. I had it on a tape, and I think it was Triumph Street that played it. And I just loved the tune. I played the tape over and over and over, for a long time, not necessarily years, and Andrew finally gave me the sheet music to it, and I learned it, and it's probably my favorite tune.
I'm going to look it up. I'd like to know.
Yeah, it's a great tune. Yeah. And of course, there.
If it makes you feel any better, Ted, I am terrible at remembering tune names.
Yeah, I could tell you if I wasn't on an interview.
Of course, totally. Yeah.
Trip to Ballymena is another fun one that I learned from that Andrew taught. Trip to Ballymena and Poison Dwarf. Those two go together real well.
I haven't heard Trip to Ballymena, or at least I don't recall. Now, the Poison Dwarf, though, that's a title you don't forget once you hear it. So
yeah. There's Tripping Up the Stairs, and there's another tune that goes with it that I learned from another friend of mine that I can't remember the name of.
Are you is your learning style strongly sheet music versus ear, or is it a blend?
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yes.
Yeah.
Most of it is sheet music. Tunes like Highland Laddie, and I've never seen the sheet music to that tune. I've just played it so many times in mass bands that I just play it.
Yeah. Yep.
Although I don't like it, but oh boy. Of course, Highland Cathedral it's a wonderful processional, and it's so versatile that you can use it for anything.
And I don't feel like you mentioned that Highland. Wait, it was Highland Laddie. You just said you don't particularly like, right?
Right.
Yeah. And the thing is, like, I think all of us have like one or two, at least a few of the common marches that we just would prefer not to play. It would depend. From person to person, they might be different, but we all kind of have some tunes we get tired of. I don't feel like Highland Cathedral ever gets any kind of hate. I think probably all of us have been playing it for a long time, and it's still great. It's just a really good tune.
Oh yeah, and it's easy to learn. It's just it's got this majesty to it that I really like.
Especially when the drums are going too, right? That
yeah.
It just is so nice.
Yeah. We played it with the Tabernacle Choir.
You got
years ago.
Sometimes I forget about that. You guys have done some cool stuff with that giant choir there in Salt Lake. That's gotta be a lot of fun.
Yeah, that was a real rush. This is back in 2005, but I wish I could just pop off all my favorite tunes. To name them, but
like just last night, Ted, I was in my backyard playing and just thought to myself, how silly that like several of the songs I played, I should say tunes that I played, right? Several of them I've been playing for like 20 years, and I like them, and I have no idea what they're called. I can't remember. I can't get the titles and the tunes together,
Yeah. They go. It's amazing. How many you kind of have to you hear this tune and you play it for a while, and then it's been several years and you got to go back and play it again.
Though for some of us, do you know Larry Erdman?
Yeah,
I swear that guy has got a like encyclopedia in his brain for pipe tunes. Like, he hears 4 bars of something, he can tell you exactly the name, 3 or 4 alternative names for it, or you give him the name and he can bust out the tune. Like he's one of those people. He and Johnny Miner are both people who I know who just like you can go to them and be like, hey, what's this tune? And they'll probably know exactly what it is.
Yeah, I wish I had it like that well. I wish it was that good, but yeah, there have been so many over the years, and some of them I've got my book full of sheet music, that's about, I don't know, 1.5 inches thick, and and there I go through. Oh yeah, I remember this, and you play it, and you just do it for fun. It would be great to have a great repertoire that you could just pop off anytime you need to.
Have you ever felt the impulse, Ted, to bust out the highlighter with your book of sheet music in the same way you do? Like, that's a good passage.
No, not quite.
Yeah,
not quite.
Yeah.
But there are plenty of good tunes out there, and I've been fortunate to learn a few of them.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that's wonderful, and like really, truly, no pressure to remember exactly which tunes by name, because, like I say, I have a hard time remembering myself, and it's definitely an understandable thing that, of course, when you're put on the spot and asked a question like that, that's when the info all flies. You're gonna remember. This is just, I'm sure you already know, but prepare for the madness that will come when 20 minutes after we hang up, you're going to think,
this tune. Well, you listen to some of the CDs out there and you think, oh, yeah, where did they get that? You know? There's a tune from the 1991 World Championships, and I can't remember the band, but the name of the tune is O'Rourke's. At least that's what it says on the CD cover, right?
Yeah.
And I love this tune.
Yeah.
But I have never been able to find it. So if anybody out there knows where I could find that tune, I probably it would be great to hear it and be able to learn how to play it.
I suspect that a lot of us pipers must have this experience in common, where we are just being driven crazy by, like, we can hear a snatch of a tune in our head and can't remember what it's called or something like that, or we hear a tune like that in a competition and we go, what is that tune? And we go on this just hunt, right? You're like getting on the forums online, you're playing the snatches for your friends, you're sending them voice memos or playing it when you see each other in person, or humming it to each other and being like, does anybody know what this tune is?
Yeah, I've been there too.
That's going to be like the very piping specific application of AI that we can all look forward to, like some great database reader that can understand what we're humming and dish it up to us.
I know this tune.
Yeah. So then, Ted, if money were no object, but you had to, this has to be like a piping related thing, whether it's new equipment or travel or something. If money were no object, you've got a blank check to spend on piping, what would you do, or what would you get?
If money were no object, can I do more than one thing?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Give me the whole list.
I would probably get a new set of small pipes, and I would travel. I would go back to Scotland again, and listen to. Not necessarily go to the Worlds, but I would maybe seek out some of the better pipers in Scotland, and maybe sit down with them for a bit. And you're saying this has to be a piping related thing. That's probably
right. That's the one restriction. Yes, that's right. Speaking of needing restrictions to drive creativity, right?
Right.
Those are our bumpers there.
Yeah. I would seek out a few of the pipers that I know and want a few lessons.
And with money as no object, you could pay them handsomely for their time.
Right.
So.
Right.
And do you have a specific set of small pipes or a maker in mind when you say you'd get a new set, or would it just be fun to have any kind of new set?
Well,
remember, if you don't say Ross Morrill, if you don't say the Morrill's small pipes, they're going to be offended. So just throwing that out there.
Yeah, right. Well, it's a shameless plug. Plug, right? I love my small pipes. Yeah. And my problem is it could be variable. It could be me, actually. That's
always the nagging worry in the back of our minds, isn't it?
Whatever small pipes I play, it'll probably be the same problem. Is that I have a tough time covering the holes to a degree that I don't get squeaks.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And so it's not. I'm not sure if it's the maker of my small pipes that is the problem, because and so it might be me. So I could get a whole other set of more small pipes made by Ross and Andrew, and I still may have the same problem.
Mm-hmm.
But I was playing them the other day, and I thought, this is it's so, sometimes it's just so hard to make sure your fingers are landing right precisely, and the whole, to not have a squeak.
Mm-hmm.
You can't, sometimes you can't even hit these grace notes because it's like you're battling your chanter. And so I'm wishing there would be some cure to that. Maybe I just have to learn something different. Maybe, like, I'm looking inward now, and the problem is me, not the pipes.
So maybe the money no object situation is more like pay a top psychologist to do an evaluation with you. Maybe
pay one of the top pipers to help me play my small pipes.
There you go. That or extensive plastic surgery on your fingers to somehow make them perfect for small pipes, right?
Yeah.
I've heard. I don't have a C set, a set of small pipes in the key of C myself, but they're kind of a hot thing these days. And I've heard some people say that the reason they like them so much is because the finger hole spacing is so comfortable. Which, I can imagine how that could be. Maybe it feels pretty natural for a lot of human hands.
That might be the way to go.
Could be, yeah. Now you grew up here in Utah, so I maybe can guess, but how do you feel about pineapple on pizza?
That's a travesty.
Interesting. See, I expected the opposite. I feel like a lot of native Utahns are into it.
Yeah, it's just a plain travesty. It's just this. Yeah, pineapple doesn't belong on pizza at all.
So you've had to grow up in a difficult place for somebody who feels that way. How many times as a kid did you look around and just be like, "Can I just get a slice of pepperoni?"
Yeah, no, I mean, it's been a long time since I've had pizza with pineapple on it.
Yeah, you can avoid it, huh?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, no, I've seen it, but it's like cats and dogs living together. It's like,
it's just not natural.
Yeah,
complete pandemonium.
Yeah.
So I'm just so you know, I'm gonna try to start directing us toward a graceful close. So if in the back of your mind you start thinking of something profound to end on, feel free to. But I have a couple other questions first.
Sure.
You do mention, like in the essay you wrote, that you play in parks fairly frequently. Now that's a lovely thing, and I think all of us have done it. It's beautiful for plenty of reasons. But I'm curious, is part of the reason that your wife maybe has heard enough? And maybe when your kids were at home, they had also heard enough, and so you kind of needed to get some distance away from the people who you lived with in order to practice your instrument?
No, not at all. I'll practice in my backyard occasionally if it's just kind of a play to play.
Mm-hmm.
If I just want to play around and I don't feel like driving over to the park, I'll go in the backyard and play. My neighbors actually love it.
Oh, that's great. That's good that you ended up in a good spot then.
At least they say they do. And so I'll play in my backyard occasionally. But the reason I go to the park is what I'm concerned about is that I go to the park to work out the gnarly parts of the tune.
Mm.
If I'm having trouble with the part of the tune and I need to repeat those few measures over and over and over and over and over and over again to get it down, I don't want to do that in my backyard because I like my neighbors.
That's considerate
right?
of you, yeah.
And so I know that they don't want to hear that repetition over and over. So I'll go to the park where people will still hear it, but I have much more room.
Yeah.
And so that's where I do a lot of my more serious work when it comes to overcoming something that's bugging me.
Well, that makes sense. You'd think that the people at the park are probably more transient. They're not going to be there for such a long time that your repetitions will drive them crazy. And even if they were, you'll never see them again, right? Who cares?
Yeah, well, I mean, the place where I practice typically is just less than a quarter mile from my house, and there's a picnic table there. There's some volleyball nets, and there's some baseball diamonds out in the distance, but it's not a place like a city park where it has playground equipment and people go there. I mean, some people go there to run their dogs and play baseball and stuff like that, but it's not nearly as packed with people as a city park.
Gotcha.
But even in the city park, I think you have a little more leeway. I would. Not necessarily leeway. You don't have to be I'm not as concerned about it as I would be in my backyard where I have people.
Yeah.
People.
No, that makes sense. I have a neighbor across the street who was being very generous and nice about it, right? But I do remember when I first realized that like maybe I was driving people crazy a little bit, because he did ask me like, "What are you getting ready for?" Because he noticed that I was playing the exact same thing over and over and over again for hours on end, day after day after day. I was trying to get a 2/4 march down for a solo competition. He's like, "What are you training for over there?"
What's going on?
Oh, I see.
Well, people who live by the park, they hear the same thing over and over again.
Yeah.
But I try to mix it up a little bit. I'll go through the band stuff for a while, and then I'll think, okay, what other tune do I want to play? I'll play Jimmy Blue.
Yeah.
I'll play some other tunes, Skyboat Song or Highland Cradle, which is a nice lullaby. And I'll play any number of tunes just for my own enjoyment at the end of my practice time.
So you'll give them kind of a nice finish.
Yeah, and I usually end with Amazing Grace, typically that or Ode to Joy.
Oh yeah.
I didn't know you could play Ode to Joy on the bagpipes very well until I met a guy who was with one of the Portland bands, and he was actually from Utah. And we played together during the pandemic, and he started playing Ode to Joy, and I thought, I didn't know you could do that, and so I started playing it.
Anytime you can get like one of those familiar, pretty Western melodies that happens to use that flat seventh, it's a real relief, isn't it? You're like, oh wow, I can actually do the real thing.
Yeah,
how fun.
Yeah, with the limited palette on which we have to work.
Yeah. If you could go back to any gig that you have played so far in your piping career and redo it, either because it was so enjoyable you'd love to do it again, or because maybe something happened that you wish you could have done better, what gig would that be?
Oh gosh. Oh goodness.
And I guess too, I do say gig. Maybe it doesn't have to be necessarily something that you play. Yeah, performance of any kind, not necessarily hired. Just a time you were playing your pipes, I guess.
Yeah. Well, there've been a couple. The tabernacle choir thing.
Yeah.
Here you're standing in a hall that's holding 21,000
Yeah,
people.
tell us about all of it, because some of us are familiar, have been to the tabernacle and stuff like that, but some of us haven't. So tell us all about all of it, the setting.
Well, this is actually the conference center, and
that's right.
It's a huge building, and it holds 21,000 people, and it's this huge stage. And
but indoors, it should be pointed out. It's not
indoors.
It's not an outdoor stadium.
You're playing with the Utah Symphony, you're playing with the Tabernacle Choir.
Which, do you know how many hundreds of members are in that choir?
There's like 300 some odd people in that
it's
choir.
It's a huge choir. Yeah.
And you're playing with the Utah Symphony, and
which is a full on
it's a world-renowned symphony orchestra, and
did they activate the organ while you were there as well?
Yeah,
as part of it?
Yeah.
So then there's also that
so
massive pipe organ.
You've got the organ going, and the place is packed.
And then how many pipers and drummers were there too? Was it the whole band?
It was
So
it was. This is back in 2005, and you're standing up there amid the choir, and you're playing Highland.
Was it Highland Cathedral? Is that
you're playing Highland? One of the songs was Highland Cathedral, and the choir director is just he's pulling it right out of you. Craig Jessup, just an amazing guy, and they give you this standing ovation.
Yeah.
So I think I would love to have that happen again. And on the other hand, last year I was playing a solo for a church group, and I was playing Steam Train to Maleg. And or how do you pronounce it, Maleg or Meleg?
Nobody knows. It's a mystery.
But I love that tune, and I had practiced it like crazy, and I got up there and choked.
Oh.
I mean, I made it through the tune.
Yeah.
But I didn't play it well.
Yeah.
And I just, and people knew it. I talked to a few people afterward, and they said, "Yeah, we could tell you weren't very happy about it." And so I would, if I could do that again, better.
Yeah.
I mean, the next thing I did is, after my pipes, after they forgave me for doing so poorly, we got together again and worked it out and started playing the tune wonderfully. I played Steve Train to my leg several times in the park, and played it pretty well. And so I would love to go back and do that over.
Yeah.
And so those two things. On one end, you had this great highlight of your life, and then on the other end, you had this solo performance where you felt, you just crashed and burned.
Yeah.
So
I've crashed and burned too, if that makes you feel any better. That looms large in my mind. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah. And there's somewhere you're in between most of the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Ted, this has been lovely. I've really enjoyed talking with you. And if you don't have anything profound to say to take us out on No Sweat, we can also end with a dirty limerick or ridiculous bagpipe-related knock-knock joke or nothing. But
no, it's that you've heard this before probably, but it was on the bass drum of the Utah Pipe Band for many years, and it's a simple saying: "Whate'er thou art, act well thy part."